What's up, Fight World? It's your boy LJ, and I have a special guest with me here today. The original, the OG, the one who introduced me to the game, Pops.
What's up, Fight World?
And this is my name is LJ. This is the original. This is Lester Senior right here. Hence, he got on the senior shirt. So what we wanted to do for you all today is we just wanted to recap the fight year of 2020. It's been, even with the pandemic, it has been an exciting year for boxing. But before we get into that, like I said, this man is the reason why I love boxing so much. So Pops, my first question for you.
What you got, son?
What made you fall in love with boxing?
Well, just like I introduced you into boxing, my dad introduced me into boxing.
Okay.
So I remember back in the day coming up as a young man, listening to my dad talk about fighters like Roberto Duran, Alexis Arguelles, of course, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and all those guys coming up through the late 60s and the early 70s. So that's how I learned to fall in love with boxing. So in the early 80s, I was following guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Thomas Hearns, and fighters like that made me grow to love the sport.
Man, that's wild, because I remember to this day, in my Deontay Wilder voice,
to this day,
I remember when my oldest sister, Jennifer, she recorded over the VCR tapes of the fights that you had.
Sad day for boxing. Sad day.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember when you found out, you were heated.
Yeah, she recorded over the Prince Nassim versus, what's his face now? Barrera. When Barrera beat Prince Nassim for the featherweight title. And I recorded it on an old VCR tape, and she recorded over that fight. I think I had a Roy Jones Jr. on that tape as well.
Man.
Yeah.
What's even funnier is the boxing gloves that you had. I remember there's a picture in one of Mama's photo albums. Me, I have the high top fade, so you can tell it's like in the early 90s,
right.
And I got the boxing gloves up like this with my shirt off.
Right.
I still have those gloves.
That's right, as a classic.
I still have those gloves. So we took you all down a walk down memory lane. Now let's get into these fights. So as we said, in spite of the pandemic, 2020 was still an action-packed year. We started off in January with the greatest woman of all time, Clarissa Shields. She defended her title, the super middleweight and the middleweight title.
Yes.
She fought, what was her name? Ivana Habazin, something like that.
Yes.
I just remember the build up to this fight.
Yeah.
I remember the build up to this fight. They did not like each other. They had some exchange of words, and it was. I just remember the build up. It was a great build up, and it was an excellent way to start off the year.
I thought that it was a good way to start off the year, and I also was glad that they was able to showcase the women.
Exactly.
You know, I would like to see more of that in 2021 and going forward.
Absolutely.
And I think that she's going to be a great ambassador for the sport, sport of women boxing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The thing I like about Clarissa Shields is that she will fight any and everybody. She will fight any and everybody, and I like the fact that she will fight anywhere in between 5 different weight classes, just to prove, like, hey, I may be at middleweight, but if you want me to come down, I'll come to you. You want me to come up, I will come to you. She's not afraid of anybody. I really hope she gets some bigger fights. But one thing as well that she has advocated for was 3-minute rounds for women. They currently have 2-minute rounds, and it's just I feel like they can never really warm up within those 2 minutes. Like, they have to be pedal to the metal from the opening bell.
My opinion on that is you always got to look at the safety
Right.
of the fighters first. And if the 2-minute round is safer for the fighters, then let's go that route. If there's some more evidence later on in the future showing that there's no difference in the safety aspects between 2 minutes and 3 minutes, then by all means, let's go to 3 minutes and let's allow the women to showcase their talents in the sport of boxing.
I'm with that. I'm with that. There has to be research. It's just I sounded a little barbaric, you know, like the gladiators fight to the death. But no, seriously though, I just want the women, like you said, to be able to showcase their talents. And if it takes research for that to happen, I'm all for it. So Clarissa Shields, she started off the year, and then the following weekend, Jeison Rosario defeated Julian J-Rock Williams.
That was a really good fight.
It really
That was in my top 5, so to speak, of upsets of the year, because I don't think very many people, including myself, gave Jeison Rosario that much of a chance against J-Rock Williams.
Right.
And I was basing that on J-Rock's previous fight where he looked really, really good.
Yeah.
So when they came in, I thought that J-Rock was going to go ahead and basically mop the floor with this guy, with Rosario.
Wow.
But Rosario came in and he showed that he was a true professional. He was ready for the fight. He was well prepared. And he took it to J-Rock.
He took it to him.
He took it to J-Rock and really, really surprised me. But, hey, congratulations to him. And moving forward, I would love to see him fight again.
Yeah, I love Jeison Rosario, especially after that fight. Even though he fought later on in the year and was to be defeated by one of the Charlo twins, but still the fact that he beat J-Rock in his hometown.
Correct.
And it wasn't a decision.
No.
It was a stoppage.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember after the referee stopped the fight, J-Rock was like, wow. Is
he stopping it? He stopped it.
He mouthed the words, wow, in the ring. Like Rosario, he came in his hometown, he was focused, and he was the aggressor the whole night.
I think J-Rock had a little bit of that hometown in him. You know, usually when you fight in your hometown for the first time in a big event, a big fight,
right?
I think that caught him a little bit off balance and not 100% prepared for Jeison Rosario.
Definitely.
I think that played a part in it too. However, that doesn't take away from what Rosario did in the ring.
Not at all.
And he beat him, soundly.
He did. He beat him soundly. I was shocked, and I remember where I was when the referee waved that fight off and got in between Rosario and J-Rock. I was like, man, my mouth dropped.
Yeah.
So those were the first 2 weekends in 2020. And then the following weekend after that, Danny Garcia fought and defeated Ivan Redkach.
We don't even talk about that fight, I knew as soon as that fight was announced and you seen the small promotion, driving that fight.
Right.
I mean, that was... I'll leave it at that.
No, I agree. I know that was just a keep busy fight for Danny Garcia, because that was the original date when he and Errol Spence were supposed to fight,
right.
But Errol Spence was recovering from that horrific car accident.
Right, and that was my letdown on the whole thing. I was really, really looking forward to Danny Garcia and Errol Spence back then.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a better fight. I still think that it would have been competitive. I still think Spence would have beat him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would have been a better fight had it happened back then. But like you said, Errol Spence was recovering from his car accident and being prepared to make sure that he was 100%. So, but that fight there.
Right. So then here comes the next fight. Jojo Diaz.
Yes.
He defeated Tevin Farmer.
This also was in my top 5 of upsets of the year. I really thought Tevin Farmer was going to come in there and showcase his skills and abilities to enhance his standing in that, 126, 130 weight class with the rest of those guys,
Right.
Tank Davis and all those guys. But he came in there and Jojo Diaz let him have it. He let him have it. And it was a sound defeat, and he got to take that one, and he got to learn from that one.
He does. I would have thought he would have learned, because early in his career he suffered some losses,
Right.
but then he had worked his way back up, and he was the champion. And Jojo Diaz came and took that belt from him. And I was with you. I was highly disappointed in Tevin Farmer's performance because him and Tank Davis had been jawing at it,
Right.
and I was looking forward to that fight being set up, and I felt like this would have been a perfect stepping stone. Like, right before the Super Bowl, it was a highly anticipated fight. It was a good opponent, and he could have showcased his defensive skills. It was just, he just didn't look prepared.
No.
Didn't look prepared. Weekend after that, Gary Russell Jr., Mr. Gary Russell Jr.,
Right.
fought King Tug. It was in Philly. So I just remember that fight. It was built up as King Tug was supposed to be this monster killer. Like, he had this amazing power that could possibly catch Gary Russell,
Right.
and that could get him out of there. So he was built up, he was hyped up, and it was really hyped because Gary Russell got in there and showed superb boxing skills.
I love that fight for that reason. Gary Russell went in there and he showed why he is where he is in the game of boxing.
Absolutely.
Superior boxing, superior ring IQ,
Yes.
superior hand speed, and superior footwork. He dominated that fight from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And I love why he's one of my favorite fighters to watch. I love Gary Russell when he fights. I love to watch him fight.
I just wish he got in the ring more often.
Yeah.
And I know this year was a pandemic, but even before then, he would only get in like maybe once. We were lucky twice.
Right. He's averaging like once every 8 or 9 months. And I would like to see him get in there a little bit more frequent. But once again, you always got to look at the schedules of who's fighting who and when they're fighting. Also, what dates are open
Right.
to fight.
It's a business, a whole business.
So I think he's, fell in that rut where he had to find an open spot and find a caliber fighter who was worth, promoting the fight against.
Absolutely. It makes sense. It makes boxing business sense.
Right.
It's just me as a consumer, I would love to see him in there more frequently.
As a fan, I think I could watch Gary Russell like once a month.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So following up right after that, the weekend right after that, I told you 2020 came out on fire.
Right.
Caleb Plant, he finally he retains his super middleweight title. And I was so elated for Caleb Plant because I really dove into this boxing thing with Mayweather. That's when I really started diving deep.
Right.
And I know Caleb Plant used to work out sometimes in the TMT gym. So there was hype around him. And of course, you don't know if it's the great Whyte hype or you don't know if he's for real. And I think he's shown us that Caleb Plant is for real.
Up until that fight, I didn't believe in anything Caleb Plant was putting out there.
Wow.
I really didn't.
Really?
I thought he was the great Whyte hype. But when I watched that fight and the way he came out and the way he dominated,
Definitely
changed my opinion. I did a 180 on Caleb Plant. I believe now that at 168, he's the man.
I agree.
Until Canelo and Caleb Plant face each other at 168, he's the man at 168.
Yep. I think he's definitely the elite of the elite at 168. I would love to see him, like you said, get a Canelo fight or even a David Benavidez fight.
Yes.
I would love for them any one of those combinations to fight each other.
Definitely.
And now that Danny Jacobs is up there, I want to see Danny Jacobs in the mix with them. But no, Caleb Plant, he stamped his card that night because he dominated.
What I would like to see from Caleb Plant going forward and going into the future, I would love to see him be like Andre Ward. I would love to see him dominate the 168 division.
Right.
And here, I don't know, maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, move up to 175 and then dominate at 175 and hang him up. I think he has that type of talent. I think he's that caliber fighter.
Okay.
I think he is.
All right. That's some big shoes to fill.
I know. Mr. Ward was, people tend to forget. They have short-term memory.
Absolutely.
You know, when Andre Ward was doing his thing, he was, in my opinion, the number one guy pound for pound.
Definitely.
For what he did.
Definitely.
You know, and he decided to hang him up. And once again, me as a fan, I would have loved to see him go forward, maybe 2 or 3 more fights.
Right.
But I understand the business end of it, you know, and his family and what he's doing now. I love what he's doing now, bringing his commentary and his knowledge to the sport as a broadcaster.
Definitely. He's one of my favorite commentators out there. I wish he wasn't partnered with Timothy Bradley, but that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But okay, so Caleb Plant most likely following the blueprint that Andre SOG Ward said.
I would love to see him do that. Yes, I would love to see him do that.
That's a hot take. You heard it here, folks. I told that's why we got the OG on the show.
I tried, man. I tried.
So then, at the weekend after Caleb Plant was the big one.
Yes.
Tyson Fury defeated Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder. You and I were texting during that fight.
Yep.
You and I was texting during that entire fight. And man, Tyson Fury, he shocked the world. He shocked the world. There's some controversy behind it, but until that controversy is fully investigated, and if something comes to light, we can't take away from the official W in the W column.
My take on that fight was I was disappointed in Deontay Wilder.
Absolutely.
I was disappointed, not necessarily in the outcome of the fight, but I was disappointed with his performance and what I think was maybe his preparation leading into the fight. Prior to that, Deontay Wilder was, in my opinion, laser focused. You know, he always said one name, you know, one champion at the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
And it seemed like his focus wavered a little bit during the promotion and the build up to this fight, and his performance lacked his laser focus as in previous fights. Their first fight was outstanding. I loved that fight.
It was beautiful.
That was a beautiful fight. That was a really, really good fight. And I was expecting more of the same. But Deontay Wilder kind of disappointed me. I would love to see, and I can't wait until they fight the third time.
Yeah, that is, with all the other things being considered, like, you know, with the whole glove gate, you know, somebody claiming that his water was spiked, all of that outstanding, all of that removed, and it's hard to remove that. I could see from the outside looking in that maybe it didn't look as if he was prepared for the fight. Now, once you add in all of those existential circumstances, now that could have affected the fight. Needless to say, job well done by Top Rank and PBC to get that fight. Yes. There's some stories going around that Tyson Fury wants to fight Anthony Joshua first before Deontay Wilder. I don't want to see that. You got business to finish with Deontay Wilder first, and then we could move forward from there.
Right. And another thing I want to say about that fight, that I was in agreement with Mark Breland stopping that fight. I was, because of the fact that as the chief second, as his primary trainer in the corner, he was had the best perspective to gauge whether his fighter was 100% or not. And nobody can tell me that Deontay Wilder was 100% in that fight. And I'm not just saying 100% physically, but I don't think 100% mentally he was there. I don't think he was prepared for that fight 100%. And by them calling the fight, by what had happened in that fight up to that point, I agree with him stopping the fight. I agree.
I don't think Mark Breland should have thrown in the towel. And here's why. I agree with you that he wasn't 100%. I believe it was a combination of the mental and the physical, because like we know that Deontay Wilder doesn't have the best footwork, but it looked like his feet were stuck in concrete. So we know he wasn't all the way there. But it wasn't like Tyson Fury was landing these life-altering blows. Like, I don't like it wasn't some Rocky versus Ivan Drago where it wasn't blows like that. So that and Deontay Wilder explicitly said, like, let me go out on my shield. And I know sometimes as athletes we have to be protected by our coaches, but I think that was premature in my opinion, because there weren't like life-altering blows that were being landed, in my opinion. But that's all of that is what makes this build up for this third fight even bigger, and I can't wait to see it, like you said.
Exactly.
So that was the last major fight before the pandemic happened. And Top Rank, over the summer, they had this boxing summer series, where they had a little bubble in the MGM Grand, and Shakur Stevenson started it off, and he looked extremely good in the ring, and I credit that to, like, you know, he had the time to train, he had the time to focus, and I just think Shakur Stevenson, I think he has the future. I think he is the future pound for pound king.
Well, first let me say I like Shakur Stevenson because he's from Newark, New Jersey.
Yes, sir.
And I'm from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Okay.
So I like Shakur Stevenson. I really do. When he fought in the summer against Caraballo, I thought there was going to be a little bit more fireworks in that fight because of the backstory.
True.
You know, Shakur Stevenson was dating this man's sister, and he didn't like the way Shakur was treating his sister, and, you know, that back and forth and all that. So I thought it was going to be some fireworks. But needless to say, Shakur went in there and showed him, you know, that he was a notch or two above him, and he proved it in the ring, and he showed it in the ring.
Definitely.
So I would love to see him going forward. I would love to see him to improve on that and continue moving forward. See what he's going to do in 2021. He mentioned in his latest fight that he wants to go ahead and start fighting for championship belts and unify. I would love to see him do it.
Definitely, me too. And I agree with you. I was definitely expecting more fireworks with the backstory. Top Rank did a good job with, you know, promoting that story, making sure that all of us, the casuals, like on the outside of that situation, we knew about it. So they did a good job with that. So I was expecting more too. However, when you get in the ring, you could tell that there was a difference in the levels.
That's right.
And like, you could talk all you want to, and I believe that Caraballo, like, I believe that he wanted to put real hands on him.
Right.
But it's a different story when you faced up with the man.
There's a difference between street fighting and top level professional boxing.
Absolutely. So that happened. That happened in June. The next big fight that I want to talk about happened in August, when Alexander Povetkin knocked Dillian Whyte clean out.
Yeah. That's on Friday, you got knocked. Yeah.
You got knocked the fuck out!
That's what I was thinking about when I watched that fight. That to me was more entertainment than sport. You know? That's the way I saw it. You know, that was so-called a preliminary for the winner to get one of the big boys. You know, speaking of, you know, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, this was kind of like a prelim to that. And Dillian Whyte didn't show anything. He didn't show anything in that fight. And Povetkin showed that he was a solid veteran that was prepared and ready to go. Whether he's ready for the championship level or not, I don't know. I don't think so, but
I don't think so either.
But Dillian Whyte definitely was not prepared for that fight.
I take a slightly different take on it. I'm gonna say it was poetic justice for that fight, for Dillian Whyte to be knocked out by a 40-year-old. It was poetic justice because he has previously, before that, him and Eddie Hearn were on this whole tangent about, oh, it's been 1,000-something days with me being the mandatory, which he was never really the mandatory. He was the number one, and Dominique Brazil was the mandatory.
Right.
But that's a whole confusing thing that we don't have the time to get into right now.
Yeah.
And then when the WBC ordered the fight between him and Luis Ortiz,
right,
he was talking about, I don't want to fight the old man, but yet you fought another old man in Alexander Povetkin and got knocked out.
Yes.
Now, the reason why I say I take a slightly different take is because I believe Dillian Whyte was winning the fight before the knockout, but it was, I'm not going to lie, it was low-key satisfying to see him laid on the ground. And what I thought was crazy was that he was trying to turn around and do it again within 91 days.
Right.
And this is when I go back to saying that sometimes the athletes need to be stopped from themselves.
Right.
Because I don't know what they're doing over there at the British Board of Boxing, but I know when you get knocked out here, like you're automatically, like, you can't fight within a certain amount of time.
I don't know. Different state commissions have different time limits, but me, from a personal standpoint, looking at a knockout like that, if I had any say so in it, if I was part of his managerial team or his training team, I would say at least 6 months, at least 180 days, so we can get a full medical, review on how you're doing. Kind of sort of how other sports leagues do concussion protocol. The same thing would apply to this as in professional boxing, for the safety not only of the boxer but of the sport of boxing itself.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I would recommend. When he was talking, getting back in there, I was shaking my head like, nah, man, you need to go do something else.
He definitely rushed back, and I believe in a higher power, and I believe the higher power stopped him from getting hurt again when Povetkin contracted the virus that we're fighting right now. Right. So he contracted COVID, and the fight had to be delayed. Right. So I'm glad for Dillian Whyte that he didn't get back in there 91 days after being brutally knocked out, because I don't believe he would have been fully prepared.